Hi, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today. This is using digital signage in education with Araya and Chrome.
Hi, I'm Marco Nanelli. I'm the creative director with Araya. I'll be providing insight today on content management, content implementation, and how to effectively use Araya features within your signage at your school.
And my name is Walter Moore. I'm the lead developer of Araya. I've overseen the Araya development roadmap and help with customer stories, work with customers to determine the best features and fit for them. So I know the ins and outs and kind of the technical side of Araya. One thing I do want to point out today is we do have a banner at the top of the screen. If you want to ask us some questions, we're going to have a Q&A session at the end of this. Feel free to submit your questions throughout the webinar today to that URL at the top, and then we'll pick some out at the end to go ahead and answer. Also with us today is Lucas. He's a principal at Franklin Middle School, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his project, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Good afternoon. My name is Lucas Patacic. This is my third year as a middle school principal here in Cedar Rapids. And as it says there, we're a building that's pretty diverse, high affluent, as well as some low SES students as well. And we have been using this since 2015. And just to kind of give you a little background of our story, I have the privilege of being in a building that's about 93, 94 years old. Historically, it looks beautiful. So one thing we didn't want to do is jeopardize the historical aspect of that building while finding a way to keep it updated with some technology as far as how we can promote the great things that are happening in our building. And using Araya was one such thing that we used to do that on each and every single day. So I could kind of go through our story. We had looked through, I kind of spoke with a few different principals around the area, and both in our district and outside of our district, as far as some things that are out there, such as digital signage in our building. And Araya was, as far as what I was able to see, was one of the most user-friendly things that were out there. There's some high schools and some other schools in our district that use different things to promote different happenings in their building, but by far, I think the way that we do it with the 30-some buildings in our district, I think it's by far above and beyond the best thing that's out there for what we want to do. And kind of looking at what we want to do is we want to promote the great things that are happening in our building by our students. Those of you that are in buildings K through 12, we have a number of students that attend classes in the high school in the mornings. So we have announcements that we do over the intercom in the morning. We have announcements that we do at the end of the day. And strictly over intercom is not the best way to communicate messages. I'm lucky if all of our 40-some classrooms at that time are listening, but audio and visual are a couple different things. When students listen over the intercom, all they get are obviously the strict announcements, but when they can see a picture attached to the great things that they're doing, whether it be an award that they won, sports contests, or just some simple announcements, we have screens throughout our entire building. We have 8 different screens set up, so students can not only view them in a community setting like our cafeteria, but they can also view them on different floors in our building. And there's nothing like a student that can look up on the screen and see a picture of something that they did. Kids love it. It's the first thing that they look at in the mornings, and parents love it when they come in the building because it does showcase what their child is doing, as well as some typical announcements that we want to do just to get the attention of our students on a daily basis.
Well, that's a great introduction and some good tie-ins to some of the other pieces we're going to talk about a little bit later with recognizing students and connecting with them and informing them. You kind of answered these questions already, but I want to kind of hear from you. What made you decide that you needed digital signage in your school?
I came in with a principal that was there before, and one thing that I'd heard from both students, parents, and as well as our staff is kind of the communication piece as far as how communication was being done in the building and ways that we could look to improve that. And one such way is to kind of keep up to date with what our students are doing. We sent out a hard copy newsletter, which was 3 months out of date by the time it got out to parents. But inside of our building, we really didn't have anything to showcase outside of what teachers put up as artifacts in the hallway. So this is an easy digitally, as far as things that I can do from my office or things that I can do from home to just basically kind of keep some great things that our kids are doing and our staff are doing in our building. And kind of why I decided to do it was, number one, to highlight the great things our students are doing.
Okay, and that kind of answers the second question as well. Is, what's the big goal? What do you want out of it? It sounds like recognition was a big piece of
recognition, promotion, and celebration are the big things for us.
Okay, cool. That's a good list.
The next area we're going to get into is the idea of today's students. And Lucas kind of made the point of how he's going to, or what he wanted to get on the walls, but he also is understanding that students have changed, and today's students are being called these digital native. It's a noun, and it is basically towards students that respond and interact with digital signage, because that is what they've been doing since they were babies. It really ties into your signage, realizing that your students are going to pay attention to what's on the walls and be connected to what's going on.
Kind of a question for you, Marco. I know you actually have a couple of young kids. What would you say, what age did they start with technology? Would you consider them digital native at this range?
Most definitely. I have a 3-year-old, and she really is, using the tablet. She knows her way around. When she sees a screen, she wants to touch it. She really identifies and notices billboards, and will call out advertising from that. And in the digital aspect, when she sees things changing, and it's that information that they're responsive to, and that they acknowledge.
Okay. That kind of goes into some facts that we have about digital signage. One of the interesting ones that we found was there was a study at Marshall University where they did a pilot program for digital signage and then asked students, did you notice it? And 96% of the students ended up saying, yes, we noticed the new signage that went up. So digital signage definitely has an impact. People do notice it, especially students. Outside of kind of the education market, just generally about digital signage, Intel says that digital displays capture about 400% more views than static displays. So if you think of posters on a wall in a school, or a bulletin board, or announcements that are posted around, imagine if you could get 400% more views on those. And then kind of the last statistic here is 70% of 18 to 24-year-olds are aware of digital signage that they've seen. They know that it's out there, they know that they saw it, they can remember that it was there. And then on top of that, 27% of them actually took action based on what they saw. So if you're trying to connect to students and you want them to do something, if you want to get them to have that drive to achieve a goal so that you can recognize them on the signage, this is one of those ways that you can capture up to 30% of those students that you might not capture otherwise. So today we're going to look at 3 key areas. We're going to kind of do this as a section of user stories, telling you about some problems that some users had, how they fixed it, and then kind of following up with what's the end result for the students, the ones who are going to be viewing that signage, what's their experience in the process. We broke this down into 3 main areas. Number 1 is connecting with students, being able to form that connection with them so that they will look at the monitor day to day, informing those students so when they do look at that monitor, are they getting information that's relevant to them, things that they'll remember later, or things that they need to know? And on the last part of it, recognizing those students. How do you recognize a student that's achieved something great, or a group of students, or maybe it's an athletic group even? One of the biggest usage of signage is to be able to put those names and those recognition pieces up there. And there's a number of different ways within that to achieve those goals.
Our first goal is to connect. As a school, you're going to invest in your signage system, you're going to invest in your hardware, your software, and your time. And one of the biggest questions you're going to have is how will you keep your students engaged with your screens daily? You don't want them to pass them by. You want them to see the information and use it and know that it is valuable for your school. Meet Mary. She has come up with the answer. Her idea, and she's found is that making things personal and very current is how to really engage your students. She'll want to visually acknowledge students with photos or posts. She'll want to provide photos and videos of events and activities that are happening at your school, and even have the ability to broadcast live content so that you can connect with students or activities off campus or at different locations, and have students that are in the school being able to take part and see what is going on with their peers at these events. Where Array comes in is the ability to provide the features that will help Mary accomplish her goals. One of the biggest features used on Array is our slideshow feature. It's a dynamic tool we have that allows you to put as many slideshows on a screen as you want. It has timing that you can, and transitions you can control, not only in slideshows static images, but you can also work in videos for different flyer events and promoting different activities.
Yeah, there's a number of widgets within Araya that go towards the idea of getting the word out there to students. So you mentioned slideshow. We actually have a couple different types of slideshows, whether they're images, videos, or a lot of teachers that we're working with and principals are also embedding slideshows from other services. So they might be familiar with like Google Slides, and then they'll embed the Google Slides presentation within Araya. So a number of different ways to accomplish that. Another piece that's big is the fact that with Araya, this signage isn't just stuck within the school. If they choose, they can actually give that link out so students can view the signage on a phone or tablet, or it can be shared with parents and other staff as well. So it's not like this content is stuck in one area and they have to view it there. The idea of a student being able to pull up something on their phone and see the schedule for that day, the lunch menu for that day is a big piece.
In the end, Mary's students at her school are engaged. Students will watch these screens to see photos of themselves. They get excited when they see their classmates, their friends on the screens, can follow them and cheer them on behind the scenes. They really do feel what's happening in the school is relevant with themselves. They even can see live information and instant information and content that can come up on the screens. And when things change, they can get the tools they need to change their schedules or even catch up when they're sick at home and know what's going on.
And so here's some examples. This is actually Lucas's signage. So you'll notice over on the right-hand side, on the right-hand side of his signage, we have a slideshow and the weather. On the left-hand side here, we have a calendar and the activities, as well as some messaging in this area up top and a ticker at the bottom that scrolls as well. So Lucas, how often do you update your signage? What's kind of your schedule for this?
I feel guilty if I have something up there for more than a couple days. So typically the things that'll change most consistently is that message, the text message in the left-hand side, as well as the slideshow. A lot of those pictures will stay up, but we'll add ones as the week goes on, whether it be from sporting events, fine arts, classroom, or community or building celebrations. So again, I try to make it a point every day, if not every other day. What I don't want to have is a stale message that students have seen it there for a few days, and that takes their attention away and they don't get used to looking at those screens.
Makes a lot of sense.
Another example of slideshow use is at Stonybrook School. The principal here, it's a demanding school, and he wanted to have a focus on messaging that will help get the students' mind off the stress of school. So he has these slides that come up and give perspective on other things to think about that's going on. He's also using a slideshow to promote his events going on and news feed with Twitter active.
Yeah, so tying in some of those other elements like social media, if your school or if your district maybe already uses social media for some of those announcements, whether that's big announcements like schools canceled today, or it could be other things. We do have teachers that even use Twitter for recognition. They might take a photo and post on a tweet about a student to recognize them that way. You can also see here in their slideshow, not every school we work with has a calendar of events that they can tie in that's automatic. So you'll see a number of different ways today where different schools have tied in different ways to get their announcements out there, whether it's through a slideshow or tied into an automatic thing like a Google Calendar. Even some of them keep them on spreadsheets that they display that way. We try to tie in where things are easiest for the school and using the tools that they already know.
This next example is of a use case scenario for slideshows, dynamic, revolving, using the features of slideshow to really create an interesting opening screen for this touch screen interactive. From here, students will then dive deeper into the school news, where there'll be more slideshows, student handbooks, And what's really key about the slideshows here is you can assign different users the ability to go in and update those slideshows so that content can be shared, the content demands can be met by other teachers, faculty, administration that can be given the task to make those updates and keep everything current and changing, like Lucas pointed out, to have that feel that every time they go by, there's something new to see, some new event to learn about.
Yeah, and another one you mentioned on this one that is fairly unique. It's a newer feature that we're seeing some schools adopt, especially if they have a large amount of information. At the lower part of this screen, you can actually see that there's a menu. So this is done on touch screens inside the school. And so when they click on the activity calendar, it takes them to a separate page of information. Or some of them, like class history, can go through many levels of information where you can recognize an entire decade worth of students and achievements. So it doesn't have to be just signage on the wall. If you're thinking about using this for a mobile application for students, if you're expecting them to interact on an iPad rather than on a monitor on the wall, there are a number of interactive features that you can use to kind of spice up that content and get them a little more engaged, make it more of a tool that they use and interact with and just something they view.
That covers the connecting the students to the signage. Now we're going to dive more into the informing them and how to keep your students on track and in the know. Araya has features, or John here has learned that using features in Araya like calendar feeds and providing daily reminders really will inform his students. He'll call students to action with reminders. He'll consistently inform students of daily happenings, and he'll use content that already exists on other services, like pulling in feeds from his website or Google Calendars that his school is already sharing with parents. This ability to use dynamic content that is out there will save time and effort from everyone and still keeping the information in front of his students.
Yeah, I think information is a big piece of what we talk about when we talk about signage. There is a visual aspect to it as well, but a lot of that is how do you present the data? Whether that's an event calendar or a listing or even a happy birthday message is technically some form of data. So we try to link to other sources, whether that's Google Calendar, Google Slides, RSS feeds, if your school has a different service for that. We already mentioned kind of Twitter and some of the other social media services. A lot of that is about content reuse, because one of the big questions that comes up with signage is, okay, so do I have to enter everything twice? We already have a schedule entered here. Do we now have to enter it into our signage system? And we try to say no. The best way to do that is to integrate those tools together so that not only is your signage always up to date, but it's also not taking you extra time to perform those tasks. And some of those things, informational pieces like weather and date and time may seem a little mundane and normal, but as a student, when you're sitting in a classroom and you're wondering what is it like outside, even that information can kind of be a helpful piece just to know what's going on. You're not just in school.
That's a good point. It's also a consistent way to keep messaging up in front of the students, and they can know that where to go forward and go back to your screen, that engagement and tying that together.
Exactly. If you're looking up there, every day, what is the weather for tomorrow? It's another way to keep them looking back at that screen. Some of them also use the date and time to denote. Sometimes we have schools that do different scheduling, so it might be day A or day B, and so they use that to inform the students which day or cycle they're on. So using these pieces, when John's reusing his calendar information and events information, putting up reminders with the ticker or marquee at the bottom or sending them out on Twitter and having them appear on the screen, using those tools, he's no longer going by and just posting this stuff in the hallway or putting it out over the intercom like Lucas mentioned. These information is now shared in many different ways, so that students that may not get it on Twitter will now maybe see it on the monitor as well.
Here's an example of quite a large display. It's a 4-screen display at the entry of a school. And the idea here is to have kind of this message board system that students can walk by and glance or pick up one area or the other. It's tying in the features we've kind of talked about, the Google Slideshow in the top right corner where it's revolving through messaging. In the bottom left is a calendar of listed events that's coming up for students to engage in and see. And then the lunchroom menu, this is saved out JPEG file that is imported into a slideshow. But what's key about this is that staff members who are printing out these flyers or these information things can also say them out and send them to the right person, and they can then have them inputted onto the screens without recreating that content again.
And so here's another example. This one's a little higher education. This is Mount Mercy University. Again, the same pieces that we've been talking about before. They're using the slideshow. You'll see a lot of different content in the slideshow. These are things that have come from different sources, different groups from within the school, maybe even some external sources as well. So whether it's marketing or a club within the school, kind of engaging those pieces and getting them to input their content as well. So if they do have a flyer that they're putting out on campus, why not have it up on the campus signage as well? It's also a chance for them, like you saw at the end, to promote things like their app for the school. So it's also a marketing piece for them. And then down at the bottom, they do use Twitter quite a bit as well. So they did add their Twitter feed so that people can stay up to date on that. Signage within higher ed can be a little bit different than how it's used in K through 12 schools. In higher ed, you typically have more of a spread out location. A lot of times you'll have more groups of content or different types of content being displayed. And you might even have some other interactive things like maybe wayfinding. So there's a number of different types of things when you talk about K through 12 versus higher ed. And it is important to look at when you're thinking about a platform for your signage or for your school or university. Does it meet all those different use cases that you have within your organization? Marketing may look at one piece of things, whereas a principal may look at it totally different as far as what they need out of the signage and the end goals.
Yeah, and that's a valid point. I know when I'm designing or going through the content creation for schools, it seems like the elementary type schools, they're not more into the scheduling or the Google calendars, because really they don't have the students doing all these activities and trying to juggle their schedules and have them put. They're more or less want to showcase the actual students and get them excited to see themselves. As you move up in the grades and the busier they get, then that's when you seem to want to include these calendar feeds and these different ways to put the content out there for students to get the information they need for these events. This middle school has boards in all their classrooms, and in the morning they have the time that they go through the display and let it run so that the students have the ability to see what's going on. They use slideshows here as their calendar, and on the right side they also inform of surrounding activities, things going on in the neighborhood, and what's available for students that day.
Yeah, and one thing that's a little unique about this one is, again, they have Twitter. You notice that's a really common item among schools, is that social media part of things. You'll see on their Twitter feed, it's a little bit different format than the other ones. It's a little bit wider, and a lot of their messaging is about things like, be careful, the roads are icy, or school's going to be canceled or delayed today. So it's a way that they can then inform whether it's parents that might get that tweet emailed to them, or whether it's students that might see that on their phone, or maybe they're at school and they see that it's an early out that day.
Recognizes a third goal to target for digital signage in schools. How will you effectively identify accomplishments and encourage participation from your students? Bill has the answer, and his need is to be able to put social feeds into his displays. He wants to really get students noticed and their accomplishments recognized, and to be able to share those quickly and efficiently. He is able to celebrate individual accomplishments, and he wants to be able to show support for all levels of programs, different clubs and organizations.
So Rhea has a number of different ways to accomplish this. The Twitter feed, I think we've mostly covered, as far as, you can put up a text message recognizing a student. But one thing we haven't seen in some of these examples is the idea of using Twitter with media. So we've actually had a principal who would recognize students and take photos of them, post that along with the message, and have it come up that way. Another one outside of social media, just using Araya and our slideshow feature, was doing something very similar, where he would log into Araya and take a photo and then post that into a slideshow that way to recognize somebody. So not only was he able to recognize them, but he was able to do it very quickly. So there wasn't like a 2-day delay before they were finally recognized. It was he saw them in the hallway and then jumped right to it.
Another great feature within Twitter is that the idea of getting other people to tweet for you or get the content up there, you can assign users or create a tweet in your account. You can assign a coach or a counselor or maybe another student that you trust, and they can all be tweeting these things, and then that can then be posted on the site, so that one person isn't responsible for getting all this content, and then you're able to actually target a wide variety of students that way.
Yeah, that's a good point. One of the things we've seen with social media, and especially in the higher education side of things with universities, is it's quite often they'll have multiple Twitter accounts. Each department might have one, athletics might have their own. So one of the things they do is they can use the list feature and aggregate those into one kind of all-around school account, and then have that on the signage. So again, it's not reusing any content. None of the end users have to learn anything new. We're just kind of aggregating the content that's out there already and displaying it. Some other good uses of this are things where you can maybe, instead of a slideshow or social media, what if you're posting kind of individual photos of students or accomplishments? That idea of a brag board, kind of rebuilding the old bulletin board, but you can do it with photos and videos now.
It's a great point. I worked in setting up a sign for a principal, and he would go around daily for birthdays, and he would take the photo, a selfie with the student, and he said this kid's got the biggest kick about seeing themselves with the principal on the screen. Now everyone sees a principal as this disciplinarian, and how he was able to make that connection with them and engage with the student, he said was a great tool.
That's a really good way to bring connecting with students into the recognition side of things. That's a way to keep them involved. And once one student sees that, another student's going to say, how do I do that? Or how do I elevate to that level? So yeah, happy birthdays, featured clubs of the week, kind of doing scheduled content. Maybe there's you recognize something special every Friday. Or like you said, for themed, maybe it's the Halloween theme, and there's something special you're going to do for that or recognize for that. Another one that we saw recently was the idea of involving students in the signage as content. So the idea of maybe in a high school or higher education setting, if there's students that are producing videos, to actually have them in their videos on the signage and have them be active in that role. Sometimes even to the point of some teachers are using this as a teaching tool and including it in their STEM classes. So that kids are not only learning how to do the signage, but they get to point up and say, that's what I created in my class today.
I've also seen teachers using it as a tool for education too. They can tweet questions or history or problems and challenge their students, that interaction and maybe reward as students if they come up with those answers, so you keep them engaged again on that sign and responding to what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, if you think of, when I was a kid, they had trivia stuff they do over the intercom. It's kind of like, replacing that old way of doing it with something a little new and a little more engaging. So using these tools, Bill's students are motivated because now they're seeing these things. They want to be recognized in that way. It does, like Marco mentioned, create that connection between kind of the administrators as well as the students, and making them feel like they're the same group and that the school cares about these things, as well as knowing that their individual interests, especially when you talk about a club or something like that, if the robotics club comes home with a trophy or a big win, being able to be recognized and the whole school seeing that is a big deal. That also helps promote those extracurriculars as well.
Yeah, it's a great tool so the kids don't feel forgotten, I guess, is a great idea. On the walls, passing by their friends, and they can see everything, and then that's sharing at home again, and parents can engage with their kids or ask them what's going on, but kind of know what's happening at the same time to help those conversations and feel like they're part of the school and in the know.
Yeah, and sometimes recognition can be the whole focus of a monitor. It's not uncommon to see in schools a trophy case. So in some of the schools, we're working with coaches and athletic departments to kind of update that trophy, the old way of recognizing, to something a little more modern where they can react faster and maybe include other pieces like video that'll live on a little bit longer. And so recognition is a huge piece, whether it's directly to the students or it might be kind of updating the general recognition pieces that are already in a school.
Great points.
So here's a few of these examples. At this school, they've got a couple different things going on with Twitter up top. They're talking about a team meeting and kind of getting people involved that way. Off to the right-hand side, they've got a slideshow of their event announcements and different recognition pieces there. Again, trying to give some information and get students engaged. This next one, when it comes up, is actually a big congratulations to their team, calling out specific people and groups that have succeeded.
And they're using the calendar feed in the center as the displays for the day of. So they're really being active in getting things up every day, being that resource for the students. I know that setting this up, that they wanted, that was their key, was this calendar, and then all the things around it is kind of to support it. And there is a lot of things going on, but visually it does create a sense of the school and everything happening. So it seemed to work really well.
Yeah, one of the interesting one that I see there is the idea of in a calendar, you think of, well, it's an event from A to B time. One of the interesting things they did with their calendars, they actually put up messages. So on Wednesday, it says, don't forget, wear purple tomorrow. So kind of another way to include those messages on a daily or weekly basis could be to utilize that calendar piece of information.
This is a unique project taken by the technical teacher that runs the audio video class and technology class, and she actually is involved with getting her students to update and control the content on this site. And what happens, we've designed into 6 quadrants, but really all the students are responsible for different areas. At the bottom, they have, in the middle, they have a video production where every day they're doing a news feed, a live event, and talking to the students and displaying it on the screens. They're keeping up with their tweets. And up above, they're pulling a feed from their current website, bringing in announcements and messages from what's going on. And then a simple calendar on the right where it's bringing in the daily menu for them. Displayed for the students. What's unique here, this is a touch point porthole, so each student can bring this array URL up on their phone and actually dive deeper into the site and find the schedules they have for their groups and organizations, for the sports, and see more photos of what's been happening at their school.
Yeah, this one's a great example of being able to tie in that interactive piece. You know, this content is displayed on their regular monitors, but down in that right-hand corner, they do promote, you know, pull up this URL on your phone or iPad, and you're able to view it there. So as a student being encouraged to do that, you know, you can walk away, what is the lunch menu for today? And you'll have that with you at all times, or like the calendar of events and things like that. So if you are in an extracurricular, you have kind of one resource to look up some of that information. And, you know, the idea that the students are involved in not only, you know, working with the software, but also creating the content, they're featured in the content. It's really a good all-around connection of the students' involvement in the signage and what can actually happen in a good way with involving this in a school. It doesn't have to just be another tool for the administrators of the school. It can be tied in with classes and students as well.
We've come full circle back to Franklin Middle School with Lucas here. We initially discussed his signage and what he had going on, and maybe we can get Lucas to get more in depth about what it takes and the time commitment he puts into his signage. And initially up front, how did students respond or react to your signage in your school?
Yeah, so we put this up, excuse me, during the summer. So students came, our 6th graders didn't know anything different. Our 7th and 8th graders noticed a big change as far as the technology that was involved. My week follows delegating, so I take this upon myself each and every single day. My secretary, I'll get a few different things. She'll usually provide me some things, but then I'll input it in. So it's really not that long of a time commitment. Usually when I get in first thing in the morning, I pull this up as one of my favorites on my in my browser, and that's the first thing I look at. is there things that need to be changed? What things need to be changed, and are there things that need to be added that have been provided to me by other staff members?
Okay. And then I'm curious, I know that you have some student photos up there and anything. Do you have any stories of a specific like event with a student, any students that called out like that they saw their photo up there or recognized?
The biggest thing is when we have our main TVs that are seen obviously are in the cafeteria, but the main access that our public and community gets is when they come in our building for any type of concerts, whether it be band, orchestra, or vocal. And parents have never seen any digital signage outside of a school setting. It's fun watching their kids hover and gravitate towards the screens, pointing up, looking at, waiting for the next picture to come up, because the kids have seen it on a daily basis and they're waiting to showcase and show their parents, look, I'm going to be on the next picture. So it's amazing when we get in, 600 to 700 people at our vocal or band concerts. Those crowds are hovered towards the sides of our hallway because they're focused on the screens.
Oh, that's
That's great. Yeah.
That's a good example. Yeah. Kind of on the flip side, did you encounter any challenges? I know we did bring up one talking about maybe doing a live stream scenario, and there were some IT challenges there.
Yeah, there's a lot of capabilities within this, and my fault is the fact that we haven't utilized it to all of its capabilities, where I've kind of stuck to the nuts and bolts that I know and haven't expanded much upon that. One thing we had talked about and really haven't experimented with, our concerts are often overflowing. We have a large auditorium, but often when their kids are done, they'll go out in the hallway with the kids, or they have a crying baby, so they go out in the hallway, so it's hard for them to see exactly what they're missing. So one thing we had talked about that we would like to utilize at some point is to stream those concerts, so even though they may be out in the hallway, they're not missing the content of what's going on in the auditorium.
That'd be a great way to use YouTube Live. Yeah. Okay, well, kind of concluding this, the overall question here is, if another educator was to do this, why has this been worth your investment in time? What's the overall message you would tell someone else that you should do this and it is worth it? Because
it's hard as an educator. You're often looking at data to support an answer, and the best data that I have is observational data. When I come in the mornings and kids come in the buildings, the fact that kids are looking at the screens. For a teacher to do any type of bulletin board, it's going to take them hours. So typically a bulletin board is updated every few months, where this is updated every day. And again, it's observational when I can see the kids looking at it, accessing it, looking at it during the cafeteria, during lunchtime. That's the best data that I have to support the reason why schools should look into investing in this, because there's nothing like showcasing on a timely basis about what's going on in your building.
That's a really good example. It kind of makes me think of back to grade school, and they did have that bulletin board, and it was literally once a month they'd change it out to the next month, and getting away from that side of things would be a little different, because after that first week were you really looking at it anymore? So if anybody has any questions, we'll go ahead and take those now. You can send those in through the link at the top, or if you're viewing on YouTube, there should be a chat window off to the right where you can send in questions there as well. We'll wait a couple minutes to see if there's any questions. We don't have any that have come in yet. But if we end up with any here, we'll give it just a minute or two. I hope everybody enjoyed the webinar today and hopefully learned something or got something out of it. We will be continuing these sessions. We've done a couple other webinars before, and throughout the year, we're going to be highlighting other industries as well. So if you might have joined us from outside the educational industry, there might be some other ones that would interest you on human resources, marketing, those type of things, healthcare and foundations. We're also going to be doing some other webinars coming up very shortly here in the next few weeks. We're going to be announcing some very big new features. So we're actually going to do a webinar just to demo those new features. A lot of them tie in with the goals that we have here today for education, and some of them will provide you with some new ways of doing things. Some things on your screen that you might have wanted or wondered how to do before, and now we've created some new tools to make that a little bit easier. So watch your email, and here in the next week or two, you'll be getting another email about our next webinar. It'll probably be a little bit shorter than this one. We're just going to be going over kind of those new features and demoing what the capabilities are. I'm going to check once more for questions here. It doesn't look like we have any questions. If you do come up with some questions after the webinar, feel free to email them to us. It's info@araya.com. Or if you want to jump on our website and send us a question through there, that's great too. Or you can find us on social media, whether that's through a comment on YouTube or if you want to post something on Twitter. We'll get back to you however you can contact us.
Thank you for your time. Thank you, Lucas.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lucas, for coming and joining us today. It's the first time we've done a webinar that included someone with us here, and I think it was quite a good experience and some good back and forth discussion. I actually learned a few things that I didn't know, so that was helpful.
Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Have a great afternoon, guys. And if you want to give this signage a try, if you want to start creating signage for your school and see what this is like, the tools that are used to create this, you can sign up for a free trial at araya.com. We do have educational pricing available. If you want to go ahead and sign up, feel free to contact us, info@araya.com, or any of the contact links on the website, and we can help get you set up and started.